Hey everyone, this is Elenbaas from Nightlight Astrology. Happy Friday, everybody. Today we are going to take a look at a really interesting and little known type of astrological phenomenon called a reformation. This comes from horary terminology, and it basically means that two planets are about to make an aspect, but then the aspect refrains from perfecting because one of the two planets changes direction. This is about to happen between Mercury and Mars, and I'm going to show you on the real-time clock what this looks like, tell you a little bit about what astrologers have interpreted this kind of reformation to mean, and give you some ideas about what this particular reformation might mean for all of us. Also, it's just fun to learn new things. Like if you've never heard about this before and you are looking at astrological software, you play around with such things, now you'll know and you'll see this in the future and you'll have something to think about. So fun astrological lesson, and also a chance to reflect on a couple of themes that are now very much in the air, including an upcoming Mercury retrograde. So anyway, that is our agenda for today. Before we get into it, don't forget to like and subscribe. We are trying to get this channel over the 70,000 subscriber mark in the next couple of months. And one of the things we've noticed, you've probably heard me say this recently, is that a whole lot of people watch this channel regularly that don't yet subscribe. So if that's you and you don't mind endorsing us with your subscription, we really appreciate it. It helps the channel to grow. It helps the company and everything we do to grow, support our staff, all of our projects. So really help us if you can by subscribing. And of course, liking helps as well. Anyway, you can find transcripts of all these daily talks on the website, which is nightlightastrology.com. And I want to point you over to a couple of things that are coming up in the near future. And let me take you over there right now. The new live talks are posted for August, September, and October. In case you missed it, we just did a live talk monthly webinar on Uranus into Gemini, one of the most significant outer planetary transits of 2025. We also looked at Neptune and Aries a couple of months ago. You can see all the other webinars we did. They're there to be purchased, and you can download the audio video. In August, I'll be doing a talk called The Eighth House, the Place of Karmic Debts. For a lot of people, the Eighth House is a scary and misunderstood place. So hopefully this will be a clarifying and helpful talk on some of the historical meaning and depth of the Eighth House. In September, I'll be doing a talk on Venus's 12 love languages, which is an exploration of how Venus loves through all 12 sign placements. In October, I'll be doing a talk called The Myth of Astrological Compatibility, what everybody gets wrong about the astrology of relationships. And that's going to be a fun and I hope somewhat provocative talk. But yeah, just things that I hope you will enjoy listening to in the next couple of months. So feel free to sign up for those. If you can't attend the webinars live, you do get the link for the webinars, but then you also get the recording afterward. Okay, on that note, let us turn our attention to the real-time clock, where I am going to show you this interesting little phenomenon. So here is Friday, July 26th, and Mercury has entered its home sign, domicile, and exaltation of Virgo, and is now in an applying square to Mars in Gemini. Mars, of course, in Gemini is in Mercury's sign, so this is an applying square with reception. Now, what happens, though? Typically, this would connect because Mercury is going to move faster than Mars. But what we're seeing here is that Mercury is moving very, very slowly. And so Mercury will station at about 4 degrees, and Mars just keeps moving along because Mars is actually moving faster than Mercury, which is a rare thing. Now, Mercury slows down, stations, and turns retrograde. So when those two planets start off within 3 degrees of a square, that means that they're now in what is called an engagement, which means they are applying to connect. It's like the two planets show that a particular karmic tree, the Mercury in Virgo and Mars in Gemini tree of karma, is about to fruit. But before it can fruit, before it will show its fruit, suddenly Mercury refrains and turns backward, slows down and turns backward, which means that the blossoming is prevented from happening. Now, I find that really interesting because of what happens next. Let's take this forward a little bit. Excuse me. And I've got some allergies today. So you can see that Mercury will continue its retrogradation, and it goes back into Leo and crosses over through the heart of the sun. And then here they are connecting. So we have a connection between them now in a different sign at the end of the retrograde. Watch this. So here we can see the two planets. Now they're both at the 22nd degree, but of Leo and Gemini. So rather than Virgo and Gemini, it's Leo and Gemini. Isn't that interesting? Let's take this forward a little bit more, and we will see that that connection occurs right about here. If I'm getting it like exact, it's about 11:30 p.m. on August 23rd. So here they are making a sextile to one another, whereas when they began, they were in a square. So, and what's also happening is just after these two planets connect, then if we take this forward just a touch later, we will see that within just a couple of days afterward, Mercury stations and turns direct, and as it does so, appears as the morning star. Isn't that fascinating? I just love these little details. I think that they are really, really interesting. And you could get even more detailed. For example, if let's just do this just for fun. Let's go back to their connection, which is about 22. So interesting that Mars is in Mercury's sign and in its own bound in Gemini, whereas Mercury is in the Sun sign, and the Sun is in Mercury's sign and bound and domicile and exaltation, right? All of it. So there's this incredible mutual reception between the Sun and Mercury, who are in turn hosting Mars in Mercury's sign. Mercury's in its own bound in Leo, while in the Sun sign, the Sun is in Mercury's bound and sign and exaltation. So a very powerful form of mutual reception between the Sun and Mercury, while Mercury is finally connecting with Mars after the initial reformation, and Mars is in its own bound, but also in the domicile of Mercury. So I just think that's fascinating. Now, the reason that, and I'm going to try to put, that sounds kind of galaxy brain. Let me try to put it all together for you and tell you what I think it means. But first, you just have to pay attention to those details. And what I want to go back to is, as soon as Mercury enters Virgo, look at this very interesting connection. So Mercury's in Virgo in its own bound right there, in its own domicile and exaltation in Virgo. It's moving into the square with Mars. Remember, it starts off within about 3 degrees today. And in turn, Mars is in the domicile and bound of Mercury. So when I look at that, what I say is that, guess what? This upcoming Mercury retrograde is very much about a process that starts off with Mercury and Mars trying to connect, Mercury trying to serve something that Mars is up to. Mars is a guest in Mercury's temple. Mars is moving through the conjunction with Jupiter. There's a very powerful Jupiter-Saturn square going on this month, and Mars is really trying to execute something, to do something, which is very Marsy, right? But it can't do whatever it needs to do while it is reliant on Mercury, and Mercury is sort of unavailable going through a transformation. However, on the flip side of the transformation, by the end of the Mercury retrograde, Mercury and Mars finally connect with a very powerful form of reception between the two of them, as Mercury then appears as the morning star, ready to then provide Mars with what looked like an initial connection, but could not be connected until Mercury went through this whole process. So I hope you're able to follow that. Now let me try to unpack it for you and tell you what I think it means. So first of all, when you get Mercury-Mars connections, almost all of the time you are talking about mental and intellectual powers, technological powers, organizational or strategic approaches, ideas, thoughts, and plans, or a variety of different resources that are available and being implemented in order to achieve something or to do something. So you think of Mercury like the bag of resources, and you think of Mars as like the executive power to use them in order to get something done. And whatever there's an ambition about it, you may locate what that ambition is by looking, for example, at the whole sign house of Gemini in your birth chart, or Virgo, both. So initially, it's like Mercury and Mars. They're setting out, like the two are associated, for example, with chemistry and science and mathematics, because when you put the two together, they have that kind of analytical, executive thinking. It's like it's like a mental, intellectual scalpel. Mercury Mars. For example, there's many examples. I saw this a while ago. I think it was at a conference that I'm forgetting where I saw this, but someone was mentioning that Mercury Mars configurations were quite common in the charts of famous chess players. That's really interesting because there's like fast computational analytical speed, and there's a competitive quality, but it's mental. So all of these Mercury Mars combinations usually have to do with analytical, executive thinking, organizational, strategic, like winning with your mind, assertive or aggressive speech and communication. Maybe also, there's maybe some need for like nonviolent communication with Mercury Mars. But the point is that those two planets are very much trying to get something done on the level of organizing something, building something, analyzing things, and doing something with the data gathered. But they cannot do it. They can't finally accomplish it until the whole of the retrograde process takes place. And so this retrograde is really sort of in service to a connection that's trying to be made between Mercury and Mars. And what I would say about that is that, well, again, first of all, check the whole sign houses involved, like check out Virgo and Gemini, and then maybe also check out Leo and Gemini as the place where the planets finally get together when Mercury appears as the morning star later in August. So that's the first thing. Look there for more specifics. But secondly, what I would say, and this probably applies for everyone, is what kind of mental, intellectual resources, strategies, approaches, technologies, reorganizations are you trying to accomplish right now? And just thinking to yourself initially what you're trying to do or what you're envisioning here toward the end of July is actually going to require the entirety of the Mercury retrograde process to complete itself and to make the right connections and to gather the right resources and to execute the right plan. So that revision process is really important. I can't help but notice that Mercury going into this retrograde is also coming right off from the recent square to Uranus, which to me suggests that there's been a lot of inventiveness recently. There's maybe for some of us, there's been some real light bulbs that have gone off, and we've got some new ideas or plans. We're trying to gather the right things to execute the new information that's come in. We're trying to do something about it. And, or maybe it even refers to a revision of how we communicate with people or how we organize things in our lives. Whatever the case is, just give it time, because this process is going to unfold over the course. I mean, Mercury's, let's just go back here. I'm going to put the real-time clock back up, and let's just review the timeline once more in case it's fuzzy already. So here we are, July 26th, and you can see that we have, like, earlier in the day, just kind of push it in here. Yeah, so you can see early in the day, we have the two planets in a square to one another within 3 degrees. There's the big arrow, just needing to make an appearance. So the two planets within 3 degrees suggest, hey, something's about to happen, but it refrains from happening because Mercury is going to slow down and turn retrograde. So don't be surprised if right now and over the next couple of days, there's this, it's like, oh, you're getting close to something, but nope. It's it refrains from the connection. Then we see Mercury is going to turn retrograde by about August 6th. Do I got that right? Yeah, like the 5th into the 6th. Then Mercury's retrograde will slowly, I think a really important date is about August 14th when Mars and Jupiter combine. It's like Mars is really trying to do something in Gemini, like execute, a plan, win something, develop something. I mean, there's a strong impulse to act with Mars all the time. Add it into the sign of Jupiter, and you're really cooking. This is also in service to the Jupiter-Saturn square, which is coming through in mid-August as well, which trails all the way back to the Jupiter-Saturn conjunction in December of 2020 at 0 Aquarius, which is where Pluto is right now. So, I mean, there's what we're trying to implement right now really does have a history behind it. But before we can execute the plan, Mercury's got to revise things. And that cazimi between the Sun and Mercury happens on August 18th, exactly as Jupiter is squaring Saturn. Let's mention that as well. So you can see that the rebirthing process that Jupiter and Saturn wants to implement is connected to this Mercury retrograde cycle. Jupiter is in Mercury's sign. Saturn is in Jupiter's sign. Mercury's going through the cazimi with the Sun on August 18th and then comes out the other side, goes through the connection with Mars through a sextile, gives Mars what it needs with a powerful mutual reception to the Sun, appears as the morning star, stations, turns direct, and oh, by the way, during that period of time goes through a square to Uranus as well, and then is going to come back out, hit the square to Uranus once more by about September 7th, and then finally goes into Virgo, where it will then meet in yet another sextile with Mars. Now debilitated in Cancer, by the way, that's another story we'll be getting to later. So anyway, the point is that this Mercury retrograde is carrying the weight of a lot more than you might think. Like on the surface, it's a Mercury retrograde, but dig a little deeper and you find out that Mercury is really in the process of serving a strong Mars-Jupiter contact this month. Jupiter squaring Saturn ties back to the Jupiter-Saturn conjunction in December of 2020. There's a changing of the guard, and there's a sense of needing to gather new resources and get them all in place in order to push forward with a new structure, a new form of leadership, a new design, or a new system of organization. Those are the things that come to my mind immediately anyhow. But once again, look at these whole sign houses. All right. Well, whenever I try to present like this sort of big galaxy brain pictures of things, I always feel like I hope that wasn't too abstract for all of you. I know that for students of astrology, you're going to eat that up because I think it's, most students of astrology who can follow all of that are going to be like, wow, that's really cool. If that's a little, over your head, or it feels like that's a little too complex, don't worry about it. We will be breaking down some of these aspects in a little, more like simpler ways in the weeks to come. So I'll leave you with those things to consider for the weekend, and we will see you again Monday. Next week, we'll have horoscopes for August. We'll have the overview for August with all of our wonderful new co-hosts back to collaborate again. Really looking forward to that. Hope you guys have a great weekend. We'll see you again soon. Bye.